Yeah, nice one to see there. Always good to catch up with her. She's extremely busy on all different platforms, but wonderful to hear what she's got to say about the lads, the girls, the stadium, and plenty of other things. The second half of the show today, I'm delighted to say joining you now is Alan. Mate, how are you doing? Are you still on a high after the weekend?
Yeah, big time, of course, Like I think it's been a nice couple of weeks off the back of not so nice weeks. Like obviously Ireland losing to Armenia in Armenia, not just in the way they lost, but in the manner in which they lost in terms of getting battered. Like they lost 2-1, but it could have been 4 or 5 genuinely. It was a remarkable night. And then obviously everything going through that rough period where we were dropping points and not winning games and getting beat by Spurs. So to be at Hill Dickinson for the Fulham game and then follow that up in the international break with back-to-back wins against Portugal and against Hungary is incredible. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, all's right in the world at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about the Everton connections and all this, obviously, but just interested to hear like where you were, where you watched it over the weekend, because it did sort of feel like Ireland for that, certainly for that last half an hour, or certainly, definitely the last 15 minutes after they get that goal to go 2-2. It just felt like everybody tuned in to watch the end of that game and to see if they could do it. And it felt like it had gone. And then, like, obviously, it's been all everyone's been talking about since. But what was your experience? Who were you watching it with? Where were you watching it?
So I didn't even watch. I didn't expect to watch the game on Thursday. I was in a pub in London, and I just given up hope completely. I didn't think that we had any chance of beating Portugal at all. But then obviously it was on in the pub I was in, and I quickly became invested in it, and was delighted with the result. And then I basically flew back to Cork on Friday, just for the weekend, having planned anyway. Spent the weekend in Cork with my family, and then Sunday afternoon, basically watch it with my dad and my two brothers in our house. And I think we were pretty pessimistic going into the game because it's similar to the Everton that thing where it's like we win when we're not expected to win, and then when the pressure is on, we crumble. Ireland is similar to that in terms of, I think the most logical scenario for Ireland would be to have gone and beaten Portugal when we weren't expected to, and then get a draw or lose to Hungary basically when the Hungary team really aren't great, to be honest. Like I think you watch the game as well, but aside from Shaba's, like they're kind of lacking real quality players, and I think the general play wasn't very good either. So I think they were there for the taking a bit. But yeah, I was shocked, to be honest, And when we went down early doors, I was kind of going, here we go. But to be fair to the boys, they fought back twice to get back on level terms, and then final few minutes they really turn up the pressure. The Hungarians kind of tried to time waste as much as they could, and then it backfired on them massively in the last minute with one of the best moments in Irish sporting history for sure. I think like nothing unites the country like football, because it's the only democratic sport in the country. Rugby is very elitist. You're either from a rugby school or you're not. Hurling in GAA is quite tribal. It's very much divided on county lines. But soccer or football is the one kind of really national pastime that's as enjoyed in Cork City as it is in Dublin City, as it is in Belfast, and it is in all over the country. So yeah, it was amazing moment, and I'm enjoying the last few days of all the clips coming out of the pubs and the airport bars and all that kind of stuff. It's been great.
No, I was going to ask you actually about sort of like how it's perceived and like the way in which like does everyone kind of come together, because there are like a lot of different sports as you mentioned there, but you said about the tribal nature of it, really. I mean, what was it like sort of back home in the immediate aftermath and stuff? Like, is it on the front page of every paper? Is it still enormous? Like, even though, I suppose in recent years things have not gone well, and like they've still got to obviously get there, still playoff to play. But like, was it just like the top of every news hour, front of every newspaper?
Yeah, big time. Like I think I flew back to London yesterday, so obviously the day after, and I took a picture of the news stall and put it on my Instagram story. You might have seen it because it was every single paper was about Troy Parrott and about Ireland, so it is massive. Like it's just you realize like obviously the League of Ireland isn't a giant in terms of the numbers of people they pull in every week, but there's so many people flying over every single Saturday morning from Dublin, from Cork, from Limerick, to Leeds, to Liverpool, to Manchester, to London. Like it's a conveyor belt. You know what I mean? It really is a massive culture that we have of going to these games, and I think that while most people's allegiances are to English clubs. Like obviously mine is to Everton more so than it would be to Cork City, just based on how it happened for me. I think everyone else is kind of in the same boat for the most part, but I think what we are united by is the national team and kind of wanting them to do well. And then there's also the elements of just the crack. Like obviously, whenever Ireland go to a tournament, it's not often. Last time was 2016 in the Euros. They kind of make headlines everywhere. You know, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It's the nature of our culture. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that most neutrals, I think obviously a lot of mates from England have messaged me since Sunday, and obviously I think you Scousers are a bit more invested maybe than most, but I think everyone would like to see Ireland at the tournament, you know, because I think we bring a lot of value, bring a lot of colour, a lot of crack, a lot of maybe misbehaviour, but yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I think like I messaged you on I think it was Thursday night when they beat Portugal, and like the stuff with Ronaldo, and like I think I said to you, like I can't imagine a worse situation to completely lose my head in than in front of like a pissed up Irish crowd at a big sport event. Like it, and like even like someone like him who's been everywhere, played on the biggest stage, like all around the world, like he just completely lost the plot, didn't he? And I think you're right. I think that's why people really love seeing Ireland at these tournaments and what them at these big events, because, like you said, they do bring something different. And in terms of a perfect week, winning the 2 games, seeing him getting his marching orders in Dublin, like it couldn't have gone much better, really.
Yeah, it's just the Irish crowd is just a bit different. It's just a bit feral almost, I think. It's like, and because things go, it's like Evertonians, I always say, it's like our default state is expecting things to go wrong and to be pessimistic. So when something goes right, no one gets carried away like we get carried away. Like that's what you got your man handing James Rodriguez the bottle of Echo Falls, or so many other stories you can mention of just random things happening like that. It's because when something goes right, people really appreciate it. And that's what it was like for Ireland. Like obviously my dad, I was born in 95, just after we won the last trophy. But my dad was like probably 18, 19, 20 during during Italian 90, when obviously Ireland went really deep in the competition for the first time ever at the World Cup. And it was just, it's spoken about as the most, like, one of the most iconic moments in Irish cultural history, just because it was the wave of enthusiasm that swept the whole country. There's a great film about it called The Van, which is from a Roddy Doyle novel that I recommend. It's on YouTube, starring Colomini. But yeah, so like I think everyone grew up with those memories and those kind of stories. And then obviously we had 2002 after that, and I was still too young for that. I was only probably, I think, 7 or 8, watching in school. And then we had 2012 and 2016. 2012 was a bit miserable, but 2016 was obviously brilliant. We went quite deep. We beat Italy. So yeah, I think the country really embraces those moments.
Yeah, and there are Everton links here as well, which we shall move on to. Obviously, the main one being Seamus Coleman, who is sort of become an international footballer really in the last few months, hasn't he? Played a couple of League Cup games for Everton and came off for 4 minutes at the end of the game against Crystal Palace in the Premier League. But I think like I've seen most of these games. Like I watched a bit of the loss in Portugal. He played there, didn't he? I think he did pretty well. But obviously, I think for him playing these last 2 games, in the space of 4 days, like high pressure, intense, against like good, excellent opposition in Portugal and a tough place to go in Hungary. Showing he can still do it when called upon. And like before we start talking about like what this might mean for Everton and whether we can still play games for us, like he seems so beloved by the people of Ireland as well. And like speaking to Paddy yesterday about like your algorithm on Twitter and what it throws up for you. I've seen so many posts from like Irish supporters, Irish reporters, people who are at the game, just talking up what he means to this team and to the country. And I think it's for me, it's sort of, I've always known he's been well liked and he's obviously been a leader for the team and captain for a long time, but I didn't realise quite how beloved he was. And like for him to probably been a situation later on in the Hungary game where his international career was essentially over, to now looking at maybe going to a World Cup next summer, it's just it is just so cool for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the same as the situation with Everton, where I think he's been cursed by the circumstances. Like the Irish national team right now, is just lacking in talent in a way that never has in the past. Like, I remember when I was growing up, we would have players all over the Premier League. We'd have, a couple of players at United, a couple at Liverpool, players at Everton, players at Spurs. Like, throughout the whole pyramid, we would have many players. Whereas now the Premier League players are an aberration. You got Nathan Collins, you got Queven Kelleher, you've Seamus, although he's not playing. You got Jake, obviously, Mark Travers on the bench. But they're few and far between. It's mainly Championship, League One, even Troy Parrott playing in the Netherlands. So that lack of talent is obviously a major problem for us in terms of trying to get to tournaments and all that kind of thing. But I think everybody behind the scenes, and Irish football is quite a closed circle. Like, I think the media know the players well, know the coaches, know the personnel. It's very tight like that. It's not like England, I would say. It's much more kind of hyper localized. And I think they all know what Seamus is like behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think even me, my work, Everton are a client of ours. So we had a summit last week in Stamford Bridge with a couple of Everton employees because they're a client of ours. And I was just getting stories about Seamus that are like, one of the guys said to me that basically that if he never kicked the ball for Everton again, it would be worth the money from a contractual point of view, just because the degree of his influence behind the scenes. And even after the game, the weekend, after the game Sunday night, Nathan Collins was being interviewed, who's taken over the captaincy from Seamus, because Seamus got dropped from the September internationals. He wasn't picked, even though he was fit, and he got stripped of his captaincy. And Nathan said basically the biggest thing in this break has been Seamus and Johnny Egan coming back into the camp and just raising standards, being really good with the young players. Like, there was a moment at one point in the Hungarian game where I think it was Adamita was coming on for Ogbene, who got injured. Both Cork lads, by the way, both went to my school, Douglas County. And Coleman was basically G'ing them up in the sideline and kind of giving them a pep talk, all that kind of thing. He's just a unique character, And I think from what I've been told and what I've heard, you talk about Roy Keane as being a hard man. I love Roy Keane. He is a hard man. I think Coleman is just as hard as Roy. He's just much more placid in public, much more diplomatic in public. But yeah, just a brilliant character. And I think I texted you on Sunday after the game. I'm just so happy that he's getting this recognition, because I think I've said it for years with Evertonians. I think we're very quick to turn on our own. And I think that Coleman got a lot of abuse over the years from Evertonians who took out the club's reluctance or inability to sign a right back on him and blamed him for his own injury problems when he's the most professional player in the world. So I'm delighted at this point of his career, he's getting that kind of international recognition, not just in Ireland, but in the UK, across the media, because, he's kind of going up against these European teams and doing so well. And yeah, I'd love to see it personally if he came back into the Everton team between now and the end of the season and then went to the World Cup and then finished his career in a high, because I think that for a player of his character, he deserves a moment like that. Maybe we're not going to get a trophy, but I think he deserves that kind of acclaim, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like when he signed his new contract with us, like I never thought of it as being, like, I know what you're saying there about him effectively being valuable enough behind the scenes to stay around as a player in inverted commas. But I thought of him like he would never sign a contract just for that. Like, I feel like in his own mind, he must still have been sure that he could contribute and play at a high level, because he's not the sort of character, is he, to go, I'll just sign another contract for a year so I can be in the first year at the new stadium, and I'll go off into the sunset. Like, he will not want to kid his teammates, and he won't want to kid himself, and he won't kid himself. And because of that, like, I've always thought that even there were moments where Everton would need him, and like, listen, he's not going to play every 4 days, is he? Like he has done for Ireland over the last few weeks. Like, they're obviously exceptional circumstances. It is do or die for the country in terms of the World Cup and probably his own international career. So, I can see why he's just gone to the well there. But I've always felt like, say over Christmas, if there's a lot of games and we're struggling and, we just need some fresh legs in the team, like, if he played 2 or 3 games there, I feel like he'd be fine. And like, looking at these 2 games over the past 4 days in particular, Alan, like, he's still at like a good level, isn't he? Like, when called upon, like, he's still able to do a job. And I think the one thing he doesn't get enough credit for me, and like, there have been a time where, like, at Everton, probably falling into the trap you mentioned there, but like, he's done me head in a bit just because he's been here so long, and like, you get frustrated that we're not signing a replacement, and it's not his fault really. But I think the thing that he's done so well, he doesn't get credit for, is when you think when he came through into the team, and he was very much an attacking right back, wasn't he? His game was about going forward. He was hustling and bustling his energy. And I think as he's got older, he's really adapted his game well. He's become such like a smart defender and a canny operator. And if you've gone back 10 years or 15 years and said that Seamus Coleman was going to be a really good kind defender actually in a few years, like I wouldn't have believed you, because it felt like that was the weakest part of his game. But it feels like he's worked so hard on that side of his game and adapted it so well to the point where I think you could just drop him into a game here and there over the next few weeks and he'd be absolutely sound.
100%. Like I think, yeah, even when he got dropped in the September internationals, he spoke out against it. He was like, listen, I'm 100% able to contribute to this team. I don't agree with my dismissal, my being dropped. He is not going to be that player that you mentioned in terms of, taking the proverbial a bit and kind of milking it. Like he's very much like Leighton Baines, where I think his ideal way of signing out would be very quietly. I don't think he needs that big fanfare. He's not going to do a John Terry and get substituted in the 23rd minute. You know what I mean? But yeah, even like going to your point, like I was after the game, we were obviously buzzed. Like, and also we had people over in my house because it was like a bit of a family thing. So we were all like drinking beers and like playing FIFA. But we're playing FIFA 12, and I was going as Everton, and he's in FIFA 12. He's down as a right winger. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that just shows where he came from. I was at his debut at Goodison when we drew 2-2 with Spurs, and he came on, and I think he won the penalty. That I think it was.
He set up.
Sorry.
Goal up.
He set the goal up, yeah, and then I think he got man of the match. And then the penalty was confusing because I remember Tim Howard saved the penalty late on. But yeah, that was his first home game. I think his debut was against Benfica, wasn't it, in the Europa League when we lost 5-0 against Angel Di Maria. But yeah, I think he's gone from, as you said, being a right winger initially to being a flying fullback with Roberto Martinez, and now he's this kind of super disciplined, competent, canny defensive right back who can still go forward. But yeah, definitely.
Oh no, it's been amazing. Last few days, great to see. Yeah, great to see all the outpouring of love for him, and just the other end of the pitch as well. Feels like there's a lot of talk all of a sudden about Everton and Troy Parrott. Shaking your head there for people who are listening to this. But speaking to Paddy on Byline, he suggested, and Paddy
he name checked. I heard the podcast. Yeah, he name checked.
Yeah, so he wouldn't do this unless there's some substance to it. He suggested that there might be some Everton affiliation there, and that might be, he might have grew up a blue Parrot, but he's not been able to fully verify it yet. And listen, like he's in the news, Alan, isn't he? He's playing in the Netherlands. We need a striker. People are doing the sums and suggestion. Could he potentially be a solution to our issues at the top end of the pitch? I mean, from what you've seen of him, and obviously he's on an incredible 5 days, 5 goals, hat trick. He will go down in Irish football history. But do you look at him beyond these 5 days and his career as a whole with Ireland and what he's done potentially overseas, and think that he's somebody who could come to the Premier League and cut it straight away?
I don't know. I think it's hard. I like him a lot as a character. Like, I don't know if you saw his post-match interview with Tony O'Donoghue for RT, and he was crying. He was literally fully crying. And it's funny because on Thursday he was like, after the Portugal game, he was like, "This is the best night of my life." And he even caveated being like, football-wise, he was like, "No, this is the best night of my life." So then to go and top that 3 days later is just mad. But I think fundamentally, like, he's doing well in the Netherlands. He's playing good football. He didn't quite cut it at Spurs, although it was a difficult situation at Spurs. But I think the biggest thing for me, and I was listening to it when you were talking, I think you mentioned him, you mentioned Ivan Toney, and also the guy from Midtjylland, isn't it, the Danish striker?
Yeah, I think obviously Richarlison gets later.
Richarlison too, yeah. But I think the issue for me, though, is will he do a good job? I think he'd be a good character to have in the squad. But is he going to be that upgrade on Beto and Barry? I don't think so. I think it's going to take time for him to adapt to the Premier League. Like, I think more than ever now, if you look at the transfer business done over the summer, Premier League clubs, the elite, are raiding the middle class because they're just so good and so strong. And the physical pace of the Premier League is so intense compared to other leagues. And that's not something that this Not that that's this Brexit closed-minded. That's a reality. That's why Antonio Conte is signing Premier League players like Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay, and they're coming in and running Serie A. It's just like the physical level of Premier League and the pace of the Premier League is unlike anything else. I think even Thierry Barry mentioned it in his interview with Paddy during the week. So I think for him to come into the Netherlands, he's quite a slight character. He's not a clear profile either. He's not like a target man. He's not really a kind of super quick striker. He's kind of a well-rounded, diminutive, technically gifted player. I just think that given our squad profile, it could take time for him to adapt, and I'm not sure how high his ceiling is, if that makes sense. So even though somebody like Evan Ferguson is obviously struggling at the moment, I would see somebody like him making more sense long-term than Troy. Just for that, as you discussed last week in the pod, that 6-month period where we would make the best out of having Ndai, having Grealish, and having Dewsbury Hall, and trying to really go from 12th to 9th. I just don't see Troy giving us that boost, if that makes sense, above the likes of Barry or Beto.
No, that's fair enough. And it's obviously a massive jump, isn't it, from the Eredivisie to the Premier League, and those numbers look great. And he's obviously done amazing in the last few weeks. But yeah, it is a massive step up. Just before we let you go, mate, obviously Everton back in action against United on Monday after the break. Typically we do horrendous at Old Trafford. Although at least Anthony Martial is not there anymore to terrorise us, as I say to Sue earlier. But how are you feeling about the lads going into that one? And obviously Fulham was massive, wasn't it? I think just everyone took a big deep breath after that, and obviously getting a bit of breathing space, kind of win on the board. But it sort of feels like we need a big win and a big performance to sort of really kick the season going. And while they're not anywhere near what they have been down the years, United, I think going there and winning would just give everyone such a lift.
100%. Yeah, I think I'm conditioned by growing up in the Moyes era, as you kind of did too. I think, whereas like you'll never be confident going away to one of the big four sides, especially. So yeah, going to Old Trafford is always difficult. Night game, Monday night, they are in a much more stable place. They've got a good rest. I think Amorim is putting together a competent team at least. I think they're good players. They obviously did us last season, didn't they? At Goodison as well, back half the season. So I think for me, what I'd like to see there is really just a competent performance where we go in and we're kind of, toe-to-toe with them. We play a good game. We don't get beat heavily. We get a point maybe. We could always win the game. I think that's not out of the realms of possibility. I just wouldn't be confident of that. But yeah, I think on the back of the Fulham game, it would be a great boost going into the festive period to go and win a game like that. It'd be a massive statement. But I just think given how stable United seem by comparison at the moment, the fact that it's at Old Trafford night game, it could be tricky, if that makes sense. I'm not confident, but at the same time, I'm not going in there as a no hope. I think we could get something there for sure,
Yeah, totally agree. Like they've been so bad the last few years, and we've let them off the hook in so many times.
Yeah,
which is not.
Was it last season? It was Rashford and the 4-0. Or was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Xerxes and Rashford by 2 goals each. Like that tells its own story, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was saying to Sue earlier. I think me and Mosey left that game after 46 minutes. 1 minute after half time. I think we conceded the third, and that was enough for us. But no, mate, great to speak to you. Thanks very much for coming on. Great stuff, and I hope you're basking in the glow. Have you got anyone you want or don't want in the playoffs?
I don't know. I think, to be honest with Ireland, it could be anybody. Like, I think genuinely, because over the years, I think Irish football fans have this superiority complex where we look at the smaller nations and think they're beneath us and they beat us. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I almost think we're better off going up against the big gun, like in Italy, and being up against it and kind of maybe pulling off something magical than going up against someone who's like a small fry. Do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I have no preference personally. I think it's still a long shot we're going to get there, to be honest. I'd be amazed if we pull it off, because I think that the way the lads have risen their levels last week is an aberration. I don't think it's sustainable. So, yeah, hopefully I'm proved wrong, but I think it could be tough for us, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that anyway. But great to have you on, mate. Thank you so much. Always wanted to speak to you as ever. Cheers to Sue for coming on earlier as well. If you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify, do leave us a rating and a review. All these things help. We've got loads coming up this week as well. As we mentioned earlier, already had Blue Monday on Byline. We'll have weekend preview. We'll have subs weekly. We'll have mailbag and your instant reaction from the game on Monday night as well. So plenty coming up on the Blue Room. Up the toppies. We'll speak to you again very soon.